Hello, I'm Jennifer Gidley and I'm speaking to you from Australia. My talk is about contrasting human futures and the myth of techno-transhumanism. First, I want to make a distinction between enhancement and advancement. The techno-topian transhumanists use the term human enhancement. On the other hand, humanists talking about transhumanism refer to human advancement. Now, beginning part 2, what I call humanistic advancement. So this is the Maslow's hierarchy, as I'm sure you'll all know, where physiological needs, safety needs, love and belonging, esteem, all of these have to be met. And then we can begin to self-actualize, which is another word for human advancement or conscious evolution. So now we'll have a human-centered futures view of transhumanism, superhuman. You may not know, but the term transhumanism was originally in the 20th century a humanistic ideal. In 1950, Teilhard de Chardin published an article, From the Pre-Human to the Ultra-Human, The Phases of a Living Planet, in which he speaks of some sort of transhuman at the ultimate heart of things. His concepts of ultra-human and transhuman were evolutionary concepts linked with humanistic and spiritual futures, not high-tech. Then we have Sir Julian Huxley, who wrote a piece called Transhumanism in 1957. Ironically, today's transhumanists refer to it for the coining of the term transhumanism. But they're wrong, because Huxley's transhumanism was inspired by his friend Teilhard de Chardin, who was writing, as we said, about spiritual humanism, and also Huxley's own evolutionary humanism. Huxley was a biologist and humanitarian and was the first DG of UNESCO in 1946. Huxley's transhumanism also put forward the notion of planetary evolution, along the lines of Teilhard de Chardin's notion of planetization of mankind. Huxley also promoted the 18th century concept of conscious evolution, which originated among the German idealists such as Schelling, and it's re-emerging today among integral evolutionary theorists. Teilhard de Chardin and Huxley's planetization is very different from what we call globalization today, which is basically a geopolitical and economic concept of business taking over the culture. It's not a cultural concept, as de Chardin's was. Now I'm going to talk about the origins of Superman. The idea of human beings evolving superhuman powers is not new. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in 1883 about the Übermensch, translated as Superman, ultra-human. His ideas integrated Darwin's biological evolution with the German idealists, writings on evolution of consciousness, and his own ideas on freedom. What Nietzsche said, according to Steiner, was that the animal bore man in itself. Must not man bear within himself a higher being, the Superman? And then we have Henri Bergson, who wrote in 1907 about the Superman in his book Creative Evolution. So what Bergson said was, it is as if a vague and formless being, whom we may call Superman, has sought to realize himself and had succeeded only by abandoning a part of himself along the way, the animal world and even the vegetative world. So in parallel with the efforts of Nietzsche and Bergson, Rudolf Steiner himself articulated his ideas on evolving human-centered futures. Steiner's concepts of the evolving human being, such as spirit self and spirit man, emerged in his Evolution of Consciousness writings from 1904 till his death in 1925. Steiner also, as we all know, founded an education system after the Bildung style of holistic human development. During the same period, Indian political activist and philosopher Sri Aurobindo was writing in India about the overman as a consciously evolving future human being. Sri Aurobindo's integral evolutionary work drew from both the ancient Hindu texts and German idealist philosophy. So now to summarise part 2 of human advancement. Transhumanism was not invented by 21st century techno-topians. Its lineage is spiritual humanism and planetization from Teilhard de Chardin, and evolutionary humanism and conscious evolution from Sir Julian Huxley. Secondly, Superman did not begin as a comic strip, nor was it a techno-topian invention of Singularity University. Superhumans have a long lineage from Paracelsus through Nietzsche, Bergson, Steiner, Aurobindo, and many more into the future. However, there's an ethical turn happening. I see signs that Silicon Valley is unravelling. I'm increasingly seeing statements being made by very experienced high-level former Google employees and so on, saying AI is not intelligent. Here's Meredith Whittaker, former Google employee. She led the Google walkout in 2019, which was as a result of not just the sexual harassment and lack of diversity in Google, but their decision to link with DARPA, the Defence Force Research Centre, for basically creating lethal autonomous weapons of war. Google eventually decided to drop that partnership. Meredith says it's very clear to anyone who works with these AI systems that they aren't intelligent. They just process huge amounts of data, and from that data they build a model of the world. So I would argue that AI cannot in any way create the future or even have a place in the future, because they are simply working with aggregated data from the past. Nothing new or creative there. Next we have Kate Crawford. She's an Australian IT researcher, has been very involved in Microsoft research, and she's just written a book, it's only just been released, called The Atlas of AI. She says AI is neither artificial nor intelligent. She and Meredith Whittaker have founded something called the AI Now Institute. Here's Tristan Harris. He's called the closest thing Silicon Valley has to a conscience. He founded the Center for Humane Technology in San Francisco. He coined the term human downgrading, the combined negative effects of digital technology on people and society. He's doing a lot of very good work through his center. We have Amber Case from Harvard, who is addressing the fact that the current versions of IT platforms are basically creating so much distraction, addiction to distraction. So she's creating what she calls calm technology. And finally, we have Steiner Education in Silicon Valley, where employees of Silicon Valley giants like Google, Apple, eBay, Yahoo, and many others are sending their children to Steiner Waldorf schools. This is the Waldorf School of the Peninsula in the heart of Silicon Valley, where tech gurus keep their kids away from computers. Developers all know that what they've done is deliberately put addiction and distraction into their technologies so that children will become addicted and they will become constantly distracted, so they will need more and more and more. But they knew that, so they want their children to be kept away from technology. Thank goodness for Steiner schools. To summarise humanistic advancement, superhuman capabilities do not require technological, biological or genetic manipulation. Superhuman capabilities are a human birthright. They can be cultivated through cultural, psychological and physical education and discipline. Just to summarise, it's humanitarian, philosophical and ecological. Humans developing as human-centred. People are compassionate, just, consciously evolving agents of change, responsible for ecological balance between humans, Earth and cosmos. What is required is active psychological, cultural, aesthetic and spiritual development, and we need to be committed to bettering earthly conditions for all humanity through education, cultural diversity, greater resource parity and, of course, respect for future generations. So the direction we choose for the future will also decide Earth futures. Thank you very much for watching and listening.